And let me tee up, we have another esteemed guest coming up later live for you in the show, but Nile Rodgers, Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, Songwriting Hall of Famer, We Are Family, L'Afrique, all of that. He is here. He's going to talk about what moves him in this space as well. But here's a little sample of Nile Rodgers coming up.
From co-founding Chic and writing songs for the likes of Madonna to producing beats for Daft Punk, Nile Rodgers has written and produced the soundtracks of our times.
What did you enjoy writing and producing most?
Probably my first song called Everybody Dance.
Perhaps his most famous hit, We Are Family by Sister Sledge, spreads the message of global unity. We are family. And it's also the name of his foundation. Founded in the traumatic aftermath of 9/11, its goal is to promote cultural diversity through funding for schools and empowering young people to change the world by giving them access to events such as this.
Over the last 20 years, our We Are Family Foundation has powerfully illustrated my belief that young people are the thinkers and the innovators who are critical to both the present and the future of our planet.
Something that's been close to his heart since he was a teen. Using that formative experience to spread peace and reach hearts all over the world.
I realized a long time ago that I've been given a priceless gift. When I give that gift to others, I get back more than the wealthiest person on earth.
I do.
Ubuntu. I am because we are family.
We are indeed.
Niall, it's fantastic to have you here. You and I have been doing some work together this year, not least here in New York yesterday and in Davos at the top of a mountain in Switzerland at the World Economic Forum at the beginning of the year, and it's been an absolute delight for me to learn about the work that you've been doing over the last 20 years, because I'm sure most of you here will know Niall for the work that he's done over the years, the legend that he is in the music industry. We Are Family, Plus Plus. It's been a remarkable run. What you probably will be less aware of is the enormous amount of work that the foundation, born out of the disaster that was 9/11, that the We Are Family Foundation has been doing over the past 20 years. We're going to hear from some of those involved in the foundation, some of those young leaders that I promised at the beginning of this session you would meet, who are bridging that intergenerational divide, pushing themselves forward with the support of the foundation, getting their voices heard. I want you to just reflect on where you are at. What was the hope, Niall, for the foundation 20 years ago?
At the beginning, we didn't really know. We were just trying to bring people together. We felt that that one of the biggest problems that we have in this world is that we just don't understand each other, and we don't. You know, they use the word tolerance. It's like, no, I don't want to tolerate people. I want to know people. Like I was saying to a person the other day. Why is it that you get so upset that we're so different? I may not even come into your life, but the concept of me bothers you. It was ridiculous. So anyway, when we started the foundation, we just saw nothing but negative images over and over and over again, and nothing that reflected any kind of positivity. And that just rubbed me the wrong way. And we started without having a super clear vision, but we had passion. And I realized that that is probably just as good as not having an absolute clear direction, because what happened is that as we got smarter and the direction became more focused, the organization became 10 times more effective than just going, we stand for this, and sometimes standing for this is not exactly the smartest thing to do.
So that's where it started. 20 years on, I asked you what the hope was at the beginning. How hopeful are you now? Just explain what you're working on, who you're supporting, and what your hopes are now and going forward.
So, quite simply, when we started, we said that we wanted the organization to be as big as the song. And I don't know if you guys realize this. It's one of the biggest songs in my catalog, and I have a lot of really big hit records. But somehow We Are Family was this special record that seemed to touch people all over the world, be it at bar mitzvahs, weddings, and what have you. And that was a pretty good vision. Okay, I want it to be as big as the song, bigger than the song. I want it to outlive me, which it will do, because I'm old now. But and the thing is that what we've done is because we feel that we've touched the lives of so many young people, and then they have continued to reach out and make the organization 10 times more effective than we were at the beginning, that we will, in fact, reach our goal of making an organization that might wind up being bigger than the song.
I've got to ask you. And we're going to give some time for the young leaders that you've been supporting. But just for the benefit of this audience, because they need to know, they will want to know. Just talk to us about the genesis of the song. Come on, take us back.
See, this is the part that's so ridiculous, because being a composer, I always tell people that I'm not a songwriter, I'm a song rewriter, because usually my first instinct is something that's meaningful to me, but it doesn't speak to the masses. It's because I'm a jazz freak, and I just want to sit around and be cool. So I'm a song rewriter. The ideology of that particular song, believe it or not, I was about 17 years old, and I was hitchhiking up to Woodstock. And I was going to see this band called the Children of God, who were, just playing in the Woodstock area. Of course, I was going to the festival, but I was going to make a little detour and see Children of God. They had this really great song called Do What You Want to Do, and it had this really hip little turnaround. Down, 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 down. 16, 17 years old, that stuck in my head until I was about, I don't know, when I write We Are Family? 20?
1978.
Okay, good, okay.
I remember.
So in 1978, about 10 years later, I'm writing the song, and I went, holy something, let me stick that cool little turnaround into the song. So, We Are Family, that part until the down, 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 down. And that's how it started. And it just shows you that you could have a really interesting idea, but you don't have a way to make it quite work right away. Some 10 years later, I wrote the perfect song to me. And I stuck this little turnaround in it, and it makes all the difference in the world, because the song is pretty cool and singable, but when that hip chromatic turnaround comes in, bam, 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 bam. It's just, you could feel the vibe when the musicians were in the room reading the chart, and they could see the little chromatic bit, and I could see them like, they couldn't wait to get to that part. Like, okay, cool, we're vamping, but now let's get to the down, down, down. And I never had the heart to tell them, well, I wrote this 10 years ago when I was like a little kid, and now I'm waiting to do it with you intellectually hip musicians. But that's the real ideology of that song.
So we spent some time yesterday at the Power Station, the recording studios where you were back in 1978, and for so many other sessions with so many other amazing artists, including post 9/11, when you got 200 personalities together and re-recorded that song, and it became this rallying cry, this song that spoke to all of us. Yeah. A song of unity, and out of that, as I said, the We Are Family Foundation was formed. Before we talk to some of our young leaders who are bridging, as I say, that intergenerational divide, what's the one message that you want this audience and those watching this being streamed today? What's the one message about the foundation that you want people to take away?
Unity, peace, understanding, having an open mind. When I listen to people who have different opinions, I get smarter, not dumber. Like, I want to hear opposing viewpoints. I'm not like, I find that people who are dogmatic really make me uncomfortable, who believe that this is what it has to be regardless of whatever knowledge that may come into your world, that makes you want to go, you're right, that actually makes sense. Why do I look at it only this way? That myopic point of view that seems to be very dominant in this world right now is so, it's so completely different than the way it was when I was a kid. I sound like my parents. When I was a kid, we were really all cool. We were open-minded, and we had really good friends who were really hardcore, Republicans and blah, blah, blah. And it's true. If you look at the history of our foundation and all the people we've honored, some people were as cool and political as Sting and Paul Simon and people like that. But at the same time, the guy who was the chief fundraiser of the Republican Party has been a friend of mine since I was a teenager. And we brought him in, and it was like amazing. He had the time of his life because he remembered that we are family.
Well, listen, you and the team that you work with, who are absolutely fantastic, have provided support and space for thousands of youngsters, teenagers who now, many of whom are now alumni, who are mentoring youngsters, just ensuring that the next generation, or this generation now, has an opportunity to get their voice heard, a seat at the table, and that is what we're going to hear about next. Thank you, Niall. One of the We Are Family projects that I've been most impressed with is Youth to the Table. And coming up next, my colleague, Julia Chatterley, who works with me at CNN, will explore the amazing work being done by the foundation. But first, let's just see some of the work.
Cool. Does that mean you're getting rid of me now?
He's coming back, I promise.
Okay.
I think We Are Family Foundation is really pioneering the concept of intergenerational collaboration.
The biggest thing our world needs right now is world leaders, governments, corporations, educational institutions to give young people a seat at the table. Even though we're the youngest generation, Gen Z has so much to say. We have ideas and solutions. Now is our chance to not only bring our perspectives to the table, but own our power.
There's been so much excitement and curiosity around this idea. And We Are Family Foundation and the work that they're doing is developing frameworks and case studies of positive examples, doing research and studying what actually makes up a beneficial, actionable intergenerational collaboration.
If we're able to get intergenerational collaboration, where we're harnessing the ideas, the imagination, and the perspectives of Gen Z, we'll be able to catalyze solutions so much faster and be able to build our way towards SDGs.
And so I think this blueprint will really provide a foundation that will benefit many other organizations, many other youth, people of all ages to really forge their own actionable intergenerational collaboration.
Hi, everybody. I'm Julia Chatterley, and I have to admit I've lost count of the number of conversations I've had on my show talking about some of the most pressing issues we face: poverty, inequality, climate change, and to try and lift the spirits of the person that I've just effectively beaten up verbally, I asked them what gives them hope to Becky and Niall's point, and they more often than not answer the young people that we have today because they're uncompromising in the best ways. They're passionate. They're full of ideas. They don't give in despite the challenges that they face. And they need the better opportunities to have their voices amplified. And as you heard there, WAF has been doing this for more than 20 years. And the Youth to the Table program over the last 4 years has been crucial, I think, in helping their voices be amplified. It's about boosting intergenerational collaboration through partnerships with governments, policymakers, NGOs, and beyond, and giving them a seat at the table, to their point. And these tables have been big. You're going to hear about this. The World Economic Forum, the UNGA, COP28. We'll talk about their experiences for a moment. The big question for me, though, very briefly, is how do we quantify the impact that they have? How do we measure it? How do we scale it? Well, these experiences have been used by WAF to put together a global survey. No surprise. Actually, to echo what Niall said there, open-mindedness is key for this communication. Also a feeling of equality, that these conversations are had between young people and experienced people, and they feel like they're respected. The final thing in this global survey, 87% of people believe that responded that young people can make a difference to some of these global challenges, yet just 19% of people believe they're given the opportunity to contribute. We need to listen better. Enough of me. Speaking of that point, please, may I introduce Sneha Ravanur, WAF Youth Delegate and founder and president of ENCODE Justice, and Pete Selfridge, Executive VP and Global Head of Government and Public Affairs at SAP. Sneha, I begin with you. You're an AI queen. She's already been recognized by Time 100 as one of the most influential voices in AI, but you were already an activist with your startup before then. How did that get you here? Briefly. I know it's a long history despite your youth.
Yes, it's a long story, but thank you so much for the introduction, Julia. And I also have to say thank you so much, Niall and Nancy, for all of your leadership and for your dedication to young people, because you truly helped bring me to spaces like this. So I actually launched my organization, ENCODE Justice, back in 2020. It's now grown into a movement of young people, around 1,000 of us across every inhabited continent, working to imagine a safer and more equitable AI future. I actually come from San Jose, California, and I launched the organization in response to a ballot measure in California that sought to replace the use of cash bail statewide with a racially biased algorithm. And that was my first entry point to thinking about the use of AI in society, the concept of algorithmic bias. Over the next few years, I've been mobilizing my peers against challenges of our time, ranging from disinformation in the age of AI to potential labor displacement to potential catastrophic risk. There's a whole host of challenges that we're up against when it comes to making sure AI is used responsibly, and it's been incredible to have WAF support in really driving youth leadership on these issues.
Just raise your hand if you think she needs a seat on a board, just advising. It's like, oh, there we go. And that was just exactly. So Pete, come in, because SAP has been a partner with WAF now for many years. I mean, we don't really need to ask why it adds value, because we just heard it there, but just talk about your experiences and what got you to this point today.
Sure. First off, I'm wondering why I'm here, because this is...
Come on, Pete.
Yeah, I come from a long history of government service, having worked in a couple of administrations, Obama's and Clinton's, spending some time at the State Department, and through those experiences, I got to see where youth, because I was young once, where youth did have a voice in public policy and how important that was. I think it was lacking in the corporate world up until recently, and there's still these high barriers we have to get across. But with WAF's help and with Sneha and people like her peers, there's a whole group over there that I hope to see in boardrooms one day. We're going to get to stronger outcomes, and we're already seeing it at SAP.
Why is it important to integrate them, to your point? Because, I mean, you've taken this from being some fluffy, look, we just want to incorporate young people, and it looks good on the surface, but actually getting them in a position where this is recognized now by the board at SAP, which I think is vital, and that does make you relatively unique, unfortunately.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're all about use cases because we're software. We develop new software. What are the use cases for that? Is it successful in those use cases? We have use cases. We have some of Sneha's colleagues in the WAF and the Youth to the Table program. They've come in and spent some time in our advisory boards, in some of our development programs, and they've made an impact right away. We saw it, and we're committed to it now. We have commitments to hire more young people and to bring them into more of these boards and these other important positions to advise our leaders on how to carry the company forward.
Okay, WEF, Davos, a whole load of delegates, including yourself, got to go. That's a pretty intimidating experience, at least from my perspective. How did you find that?
Yeah, I mean, I, as a 19-year-old, did not imagine that I would be taking a detour from class to go to the World Economic Forum in Davos. So it was definitely an unreal experience. And it's often said that for 1 week a year, Davos becomes the capital of the world because of the concentration of powerful people who are just flocking in for the events that take place, the connections that form, the deals that are brokered. And it definitely is daunting. It's elite.
A jungle in the snow.
It is a jungle. It's a jungle in the snow. I like that. It's elite, it's elusive, it's daunting. But what I think was really, really helpful for me personally was having a community of other delegates there to support me. And I think it was so valuable that I wasn't there on my own, but that there were, I think, around 10 other youth delegates, sponsored by WAF, who were able to join me. And these are young people who are working across a range of issue areas, not just AI like myself, but also food security, climate change, all sorts of things. And I think that having that community was valuable because otherwise, like you said, you're really being thrust into the jungle. And you're going to one of the most elite convenings in the world, and you're up against the most powerful people in the world, CEOs, world leaders, people of all sorts. And I think that as a young person, it's hard to feel as though you deserve to be there, and it's hard to feel as though you can stand your ground, especially if you're being met with hostility or being met with apprehension or anything of that sort.
Were you met with some of that? Is there some of that? You can be honest.
I think there definitely is some of that. And again, I think that what really helped was having that community to fall back on. I think that, at first it was hard to figure out how to advocate for myself, but I think that WAF did a great job of training us to really use our voices and to approach those daunting networking environments and sort of hold our own. And so I think that was powerful for me. I definitely would go back to WEF again. I mean, obviously, who wouldn't? I think that I gained so much from the experience. At the same time, I think that I came into it very starry-eyed, and now I have a much, I think, realer sense of how global elites function, how these discussions unfold, and I think that I'm prepared to use that to actually become a meaningful contributor to these conversations.
And we'll come back to this point because I think the conversations that you had there ended up being pivotal for you learning about AI and the guidelines that you've produced independently that you think we need to follow for till 2030, which I think's you're sort of ahead of the game in many respects because a lot of the developers are sort of trying to work out how this works. To your point on experience for WEF and what it actually means to provide a seat at the table in events like this as well, because it is daunting, I think.
Yeah, and the statistic you mentioned at the beginning, 19%. You look at the UN General Assembly, it's something like 10% actually have a voice at these meetings. So it's really important to get them there and to give them a platform to actually speak. I think one of the other statistics that's really striking to me is nearly 20% of the population is 15 to 25 in the world. And if you're looking at our future, and just speaking from SAP's point of view again, if we're not listening to youth entrepreneurs and ideas coming from people like Sneha and her colleagues, we can't succeed. Those are going to be our future customers, our future workers, everyone. And so if we're not taking their ideas now, we're sort of hamstringing our own future. So it's really critical to keep them engaged.
One of the things that struck me in the global survey that WAF did was these barriers to entry. To that point about we've got great ideas, everybody accepts that, everybody understands that, but if you don't know the opportunities are out there, to the point that this foundation and this program in particular is made, how do companies need to sharpen up? And if they don't encourage young people like this, how else can this be done? Because how do we scale this, I think, is the critical question.
Well, this is where the We Are Family Foundation comes in. There are groups, they're unique. They're one of my favorite partners, and I'm not just saying that because they invited me here, but
but you can't say that.
They provide us the means to tap into this resource. But but there are other ways to do that, and we simply have to ask. There are a lot of willing young people with great ideas, and we just need to ask them to come to the table. They're going to be willing. Generation Z is this very knowledgeable, very talented, very plugged-in generation.
Does it make good business sense?
Absolutely.
Why?
Well, to maybe answer it a different way, the barriers are there, but if we can get past that, the other kind of barrier that we need to keep focus on is making sure that the youth are there from the beginning at the concept stage or whatever program or problem we're trying to solve, all the way through to where it goes to market or that sort of execution phase. And it's really important to keep them plugged in throughout.
So it's not just one meeting, to the point about WEF, it's lots of different meetings that are required to build these relationships as well that I think is key. How much do you pay them?
Lots.
Paid in goodwill. But is that something that, as an advisor to a board, do you think that's something that is possible too? Because yes, they're getting experience, but I think to be valued as individuals and to see the value perhaps that they're adding, money speaks.
Yeah, absolutely. And this generation is foregoing a lot of that early earning, to do these projects
Right.
that Sneha's working on. So in some ways, we sort of owe it to them. But I do think that the value they bring to a corporation like ours, there's a lot of monetary incentive for us to keep them in there and engaged, and that should go back to them. There should be returns on that.
I mean, this is the best kind of job interview. Yeah, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So you're a volunteer at the moment. Do you mind that?
I mean, it's difficult. I'm a full-time college student. All my peers are full-time high school and college students, balancing this work with the demands of going to school, having friends, trying to keep our heads on straight and be normal at the same time, and be kids, right? And I think it's definitely difficult to do all of that at once. I think it really speaks to the need for funders and philanthropists to keep funding and investing in youth leadership, and also helping us move these organizations from volunteer-based models to stipended or salaried models where young people are compensated for their time in leadership.
Can I just ask how old you are, if you don't mind?
I'm 19.
It's a huge compliment, but you're not normal in any respect. Yeah. I read about her and then I read her age and I was like, I don't believe it. Talk to me about, to go back to the point that you made about the conversations that you had and what you learned, because this is a two-way street. And I do think young people today, as uncompromising as they can be, and I said that as a compliment, there is give and take in what you can learn intergenerationally. And I think that's important too. And we were talking earlier and you made the point that actually that the sort of guidelines and principles that you came out with for 2030 on AI was created in part, at least, by those conversations.
Oh, not in part. I think it entirely came out of Davos and entirely came out of that WAF experience.
So there you go.
And so, yeah, I do want to provide some context on that project. 2 weeks ago, we launched a platform called AI 2030, essentially our generation's platform for global AI action by the year 2030, with 22 recommendations for world leaders to secure young people's lives, rights, and livelihoods. And that actually came entirely out of my time at Davos, where I had the opportunity to connect with leading AI experts and talk to them about their policy ideas and actually forge a path forward when it comes to international cooperation on these issues. And so I remember actually having a 1-hour conversation with Stuart Russell, who is the author of the world's leading AI textbook and a luminary in the field, for about an hour in a hotel lobby in Davos, and just sketching out the outline for the entire project. And I mean, that's really where the seeds were planted. And in the months since, we have worked with the top experts in the field. We've also gotten endorsements from people like Mary Robinson, the former president of Ireland and the chair of the Elders, another partner of WAF. And now we've built this coalition of experts and leaders and public figures who are standing alongside us as young people in partnership with thousands of young people, university clubs and youth groups who have signed on to this joint intergenerational call for global AI action. When it comes to AI, there are so many unsolved scientific questions, and it's important for us as young people to approach that with humility. I mean, we obviously bring unique urgency, tenacity, optimism, but we can work alongside experts and we can go faster and farther together. And I think that's what Davos taught me, and that's what Davos allowed me to put into practice with the support of WAF.
And I work in public policy. I'm just cutting and pasting this website and using it. It's amazing. It's really amazing work.
Great. Are you going to charge him for it?
We can discuss that later.
Exactly. I love that we're having the conversation.
I'm kidding.
I know. I was a banker before I became a journalist, by the way, so apologies for the fixation on money. But there's give and take here, too, and I think it's important. What would you say is your best advice for others in the private sector, what you're gaining and learning and experiencing with these people and what they need to understand about, even just calling the foundation and saying, hey, we'd love to work with some of these young people. What's your advice, and how do you think we can scale this at this moment better?
Yeah, well, first, I mean, I think just open your eyes to the possibility, to the value add, right? I think this generation has like come of age facing these crazy crises, global warming, wars, all these things, famine. Those things we grew up. I should speak for myself. I'm older, maybe a lot older than most people here. But we grew up with maybe one of these things every 10 years or so.
Yeah.
These are all at once, and so their wisdom and their ideas that come around with trying to tackle those challenges. Again, going back to what I said earlier, are a real value add for corporations. You have this giant population of young people around the world with all these experiences, and they can add a lot to, and it doesn't just need to be a corporate organization, it could be academic, it could be a nonprofit. There are just some really good experiences out there that we should all harness.
What do you think they can learn from your generation and interacting with your generation? Because again, I go back to that global survey and there were a few things that struck me, but it was this idea of equality and respect for ideas and understanding and listening and appreciating that you may have 30 years more experience, but you still have a voice and you still are going to receive and build a future that's being sort of created today.
Yeah, I think I want to highlight 2 insights from our global study. First, which is that young people possess a sense of hopeful urgency. And second, we are digital natives in a tech-driven world. And I think these 2 key insights really explain why we're qualified to have a place in these conversations. So many of these spaces are rife with credentialism, whether it's AI or climate activism. People are always talking about how you need a certain credential, and people often look at me and my peers and ask why we think we're qualified to contribute if we don't have PhDs in computer science or haven't spent years serving in government. And yes, it may be true that we don't have those formal credentials, but A, we are inheriting this future, and so I think that entitles us to talk about what's going on.
And shape it.
And B, I mean, first of all, it's not this or that. Like I mentioned, we have the opportunity to work alongside experts, and we can go faster and farther together, and that is what intergenerational collaboration is. And I think that our study really highlights that. So I think that people can look to us for that sense of urgency, for that sense of optimism, but also recognize that we can work together. And so much of the work that we're doing right now with ENCODE Justice is informed and supported and backed by leading experts in the field.
And their expectation for accountability is spot on too. And that was another thing that study showed.
And naturally inclusive was the other thing that stood out, which I loved as well. I'm good at this, but I've actually run out of time. In fact, I've more than run out of time. So I just want to thank our panel. Final show of hands. Who is now more optimistic about the future thanks to our youth? Yeah, there you go. Guys, thank you.